Hey everybody, Coach Kieran here, Feel Good Golf Academy. Beautiful day here in Toronto. I swear the golf season's coming. Anyways, we're gonna give you one of the most important concepts that you can learn today, and that is how club face influences club path and club path influences face. Path can determine face and face can determine path. They both work together. So when you're working on one of these things, it's rarely in isolation. The other one's gonna influence it. And what do we mean by that? Okay, let's get right to this, right? Let's talk about what the majority of players we see are doing. Okay, so here we got the club here, we can see. Now, a lot of players in the backswing, most of us are slicers, which means we have a bit of an open face at impact. Okay, but that's often influenced by how the face operates in the backswing, right? So often early in the backswing, you can see that noodle pointing up means the face is wide open there. And that happens from a bit of a roll in the forearm, the wrists, right? That's a very comfortable move, right? We like to do that. The arms kind of like to work that way. Unfortunately, right? Like look at that. My face is opened almost 90 degrees relative to where I wanted it at address when it was aiming at the ball and at the target. Right? So all things being equal, right? If nothing changes, I've got a face that's wide open relative to my target. So not only are players doing some of that in the backswing, sometimes that will happen maybe later in the backswing as they get to the top that the face opens up. But then often they're coming down into the late stages of impact with the face still aimed way open, way right of their target, and they've got to recover from it. And this is where we see, the flips and all that stuff. But not only are the hands going to recover from it, right? Remember we just talked about how face can influence path, right? So if my face is wide open in the downswing and I'm coming into the ball, it's not just my hands that are going to react, it's my whole body's going to kick in and go, hey, let's get this thing square. The shoulders are going to spin, the chest is going to spin, right? And that's going to send the path way left of target, which can sometimes work for a slice player, right? If you get the face wide open and you swing left, well, you might sort of get that big pull fade that kind of works. It starts left and works on line, right? But it's not very efficient, right? It leads to sort of a glancing blow, sort of that high, spinny, weak flight. Players who are doing this with driver, they're probably giving up, anywhere from 30 to 50 yards because that not only is that face open, but it's like you're turning it into, sort of like a 4-iron, right? It has a ton of loft relative to its natural loft. So, that can kind of work, but it's not very functional. It's not very efficient, right? So that's how that club face influences that club path, right? Your body's doing everything it can to get the face square, and it's sending the club a little over, over the top, potentially down and left. You might get the face square. You might also, if it really squares up, you get those deadly low pulls, right? That one really sucks. So that's the big one. I'd say that's probably for the majority of players, they need to know that. So, if we can help those players and go, hey, like get that club face more organized as it gets into the backswing, right? Don't let it roll open. Feel like it's a bit more in control. Even they'd probably want to feel like it's closed because that'll get it a bit more neutral, right? So we'd probably give those players some of those feelings, right? Hey, let's feel a closed club face, or what I like to call an organized club face. And then as you're coming down in the downswing, there's no fixing to do, right? That club and your hands can just get right on the gas pedal and go, hey, that sweet spot, that club face is already tracking towards the ball and the target. I can go really fast into this thing as fast as I can and probably get a really good strike in good direction, right? Just all based on an organized club face. Now, the opposite is also true, right? And so like when we see players who come back with, again, here was the open face, when we see them come back with the really closed face, right? Depending on how their wrists and forearms work, that has influences as well, right? And one thing we're gonna see from these players is their body will go, well, I don't want that ball to go through my legs or, into the woods way left, right? So they will make late compensations in the downswing, right? And they will try to fix that club face relative to their target and go, okay, the face is really closed. And, I'd say probably one of the better compensations, even though it's not great, is that they'll throw more path to the right in trying to sort of hold off that face. And that leads to a few things. Obviously, that can lead to big curve, like big hooking curve, because they add a lot of club path away from their target. That can lead to big pushes. It also usually backs up their low point. Like they kind of have to hang back to do that. And as the sort of chest and the right shoulder drop, trying to get that path, so too does the swing drop into the ground. So those are players we see with like kind of usually a shallow angle of attack. And they can, you know, especially as they get into their longer clubs, their longer irons and their woods, some of those players say to me, yeah, I don't even touch those clubs. And I know why. It's because they're compensating for this club face, their low point's way behind the ball, and they could never get those clubs in the air. They couldn't make good contact. So, but for them, it all starts with a sort of less than ideal club face, right? A club face that isn't organized to their intended target. And so they have all this fixing to do on the way down. This is also, I should just qualify, kind of an amazing thing because, like, you know, think about how fast the golf swing happens, right? And sort of just over a second, right? And especially the downswing when you're moving so fast. It's pretty amazing, but it's pretty universal how we're sort of somewhat consciously aware of what that club face is doing, or, you know, where it is in space, where it's aimed. And that's what's causing these late reactions in our downswing and into impact, right? So we're like, even as we're moving as fast as we can, there's some consciousness around, hey, I got to organize that club face. So again, right, so the more organized that club face gets earlier in the swing, the less fixing there is to do, the more neutral the ball flight, the better the contact, all the good stuff, right? So again, if I've got that player who likes to get it really close, well, obviously, you know my mantra is opposite day in coaching, right? What do? Let's try to get them to feel the opposite, right? So we coach that player into, hey, how can your wrists and forearms contribute to maybe a more neutral feeling face, right? Or for them, it's gonna have to feel, we're gonna have to pry that thing open, right? Crank the lid off of it to start to maybe get them to learn how to hit a little bit of a fade or just the feelings for that. And hopefully in the end, they just kind of hit it straight. So that's critical that you understand. Now, there's so much good tech out there at our hands, that we can access these days. TrackMan, various types of radar tech like that. So if you're working on ball flight, let's say you're working on the slice, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do it on a launch monitor. And I'll tell you why, right? So for the players who are working on this, right? Like, let's say somebody who's been slicing it, right? And they've been on YouTube or they talk to friends or whatever, and they go, well, I know that I'm coming over the top, right? I know my path is left. So they're trying to get a path that goes right? Well, that's all well and good. But if they try to go, okay, I'm going to swing to the right, and that club face is still aimed way out to the right, their brain and their hands simply won't let them do that, right? Your brain's always going to try to get things back online to whatever your target is. And so if they haven't fixed the face, right, and maybe they might commit to, okay, hey, I'm going to try to swing it right, all they're going to get are dead right pushes and push fades, right? So if somebody sort of had some of this information, and let's say they were just doing this at a driving range outside without any tech, without any TrackMan or radar behind them, right? And they're going, okay, I've been swinging over the top, I'm going to try to correct that by swinging out to the right. Well, they might actually be doing the right thing. They might actually be changing their path and swinging it right. But because they haven't changed the face, they're just going to keep seeing a push fade and they're going to go, well, this isn't working, right? Why did I take that guy's advice? This is dumb. Now I'm just slicing it more, right? But really, they're probably more than halfway to solving the problem, right? They've got the path. They just don't have the face component. And that's where if you're on radar, you could see, oh, hey, look, my path was, 7 degrees left before, and now it's going 4 or 5 degrees right. And you go, that's a big change, right? Because path is the big swing feelings, right? It's more of the motor pattern feelings, the big ones. So that's often sometimes the tougher stuff to change for a player, right? Especially if it's an ingrained habit you've done for a long time. You got to sort of rewrite another pattern on top of it. Anyways, if you're going to try to make these changes, that's exactly what I recommend, right? You need radar, you need the proper feedback to go, because it could be a two-step process, right? That you're working on both path and face. And each time you do it, you're trying to execute both, but you might only get path and not the face. You might get face and not the path. You might get 0 of the 2, right? Or you might get 2 of 2. But you need that precise measurement from a machine to give you the feedback that, hey, I'm doing the right thing, or hey, here's where I need to push a little farther in another direction to create the change. right? So, and conversely with the other player, right? If they've been hooking it, well, obviously we want to try to get them to start to change maybe path, but also change face, right? This is like the highly counterintuitive nature of this ball flight stuff, right? So you're going to tell me if I've sliced it my whole life, if I've always missed it to the right, right? Now this coach or somebody's going to try to tell me to swing it to the right, right? Even if you can start to grasp that as a concept, that's not very intuitive, and our brains are going to go, I have no faith in that, right? Like that sounds scary. I've always hit the ball there. I'm not going to swing there. So that's another thing that can be limiting, that even with the right information, the brain can go at the last second, no, we're not going to swing right, and it's going to turn the wheel and turn the hands hard at the last second and swing down the line and undo the good concept with bad execution, right? Same thing with players who hook the ball, right? If they've had a really strong club face and they've been used to throwing the path way right, well, you know, yeah, we probably want them to soften the path a little bit too, or that might be part of the problem solving, that it's, okay, it's going to start with face, right? But if we open their face, right, if that hook player has been suffering with a really strong face and we open their face, but they keep the same pattern of swinging it right, they're going to miss everything right? Are they going to be these big, weak push, you know, lazy hooks that stay out down the first baseline? So that player, you know, yeah, we need them to have a more neutral face, but then we need that to influence and give them permission for a more neutral path, right? For a swing that can now, they've got permission to swing at the target, or of course, as they're probably going to learn it, we're going to give them exaggeration. So we might give them even some fade feelings of, hey, open the face and try to actually swing a little bit left, just as we're trying to, again, break the mental pattern a little bit and change the concept around, I've got to do something much different. So in summary here, right? Face influences path and path influences face, right? And I'd say more often that, you know, a less than ideal club face is going to really influence path and make for a lot of compensations in the downswing. Again, the most popular one we see is the face that rolls open early in the backswing. It stays in that position on the way down into the late stages of impact, where the player has, you know, a split second to square everything up and make good contact and organize the club face. All difficult things to do even in the best swing, especially if you're trying to make that swing happen in a, you know, fraction of a second at the bottom. That's the most popular one we see, but it goes both ways too, right? Same with the player with the really closed face, right? Their brain and their hands are going to make adjustments on the way down to get that face more organized to their target, or try to fight off the hook and push things out to the right, and they can get shanks and shallow chunks and big hooks and stuff like that. Whereas if that face just gets a little more, you know, a little less closed and a little more organized to their target, then they've got freedom to swing it right down the line. So figure out what your tendency is. You probably already know. And just look at it on video, right? And go, how does my club face look in the backswing, right? This is a great tool. I just clipped off a pool noodle and stuck it on my club here, but there's lots of tools like this, magnets and things, right? And if you're seeing that face getting into that really open position early in the backswing, that means that you now have some recovering to do, some work, extra work to do on the way down, right? But if that face looked a little more organized on the way back, it sort of ticks one thing off the list that you don't have to worry about on the way down. A little less anxiety, a little more freedom and ease on the way down. So get that club face organized early, be aware of it. Be aware that your path is a function of your face and vice versa. Go give it a try. See how it goes. You're gonna be great at this. Have a great day, everybody.